have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.
Welcome, everyone. I'm excited for this conversation. You're in for a real treat. This is a gentleman that I've had the opportunity to follow for many years. And it was last year where I was going through some of my books and I came across his book and reread it and inspired me to say, hey, we're going to take this theme for a year and we're going to go even deeper with it. And so it's a true honor for me to have Sam Parker, the originator of 212, the extra degree, with me today. So Sam, welcome.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to dive right in, Sam. Talk to me about this whole idea, 212 the extra degree. How did you come up with this metaphor and of the single degree, and what is the real meaning behind the significant difference you were trying to make when you wrote this and had this concept?
Well, like a lot of things in life, you put yourself out there enough, you get luckier. And I had a breakfast, a very early morning breakfast, and this is going to sound like a long time ago because it was October 2001. I had an early morning breakfast with a friend of mine at a cafe, a grocery store cafe. I like meeting with people early in the morning, once a week or so, just to make sure I'm making connections or contacts with people. And we were talking, he was a sales guy, I was a sales guy, and we were talking about different ways to stay motivated. And he shared with me how his boss used the boiling point as a metaphor to inspire people to try a little harder. That, for whatever reason, hit me hard, like the book hits other people hard, or the message hits people hard. I left that breakfast thinking, I wonder that one extra degree, I wonder how true it is. And I started doing a bunch of research into really sports at the beginning, which becomes, very redundant after a while. But and I saw all these small margins making a big difference. And but another thing that happened, which is now that I'm thinking, I forgot about this. Back in the early 90s, I was a sales guy carrying a bag, and I went to see a sales trainer named Brian Tracy. And I went to see him at the Warner Theater in DC, again, probably the early mid 90s. And he talked about how the horses in horse racing would win by these very small margins, but the earnings difference would be exponentially larger. So I had that in the back of my mind. I had the story about from the breakfast meeting, and I did a bunch of research, and then I formed some words around it that were motivating to people, and then packaged it up nice, and the ride went forward.
Yeah. Well, it's a great story. And I love how just the birth of an idea took place by you being contactable and being willing to observe and now then take it and take action with it, go in the extra degree like you teach us.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about this extra degree from a leadership perspective, how can leaders take this mindset and instill it into their teams, instill it even into their own leadership, and especially when people are meeting resistance or complacency, which can be just as bad as resistance, in my opinion?
Right. Really all of this is really a matter of solid and ongoing reinforcement. I talk about this in another thing that I wrote called Lead Simply. And I think what happens is we forget that need for solid and ongoing reinforcement never, ever, ever ends. And I don't know why we forget that. I get it in the beginning of one's career, in the beginning of a leadership career. You're first a manager and you think you say something and it should stick and show up as action. And then, it doesn't happen. And then you come back around and you follow up and you say it again. And then you think, well, how come it's not sticking? Well, the reason is, I think, at least at this point in my life, having been on the planet for longer than a half century, even being the 212 guy, I need to remind myself to have that 212 mindset. And I think we too often offload the reinforcement piece of leadership to, I already said that. I already told that person. I already told the group that. And they forget that, that reinforcement never ends. And reinforcement's an interesting word. And I talk about this, excuse my dog.
No worries.
It, Reinforcement is really about strengthening and making things more forcible and effective rather than support it. So being a leader, being a manager and a leader isn't just about supporting people. It's about helping them become stronger, encouraging that, inspiring that. And that need just doesn't end. But, in my experience, I've seen too many leaders forget that they need to do that. And that's where the ball gets dropped.
Yeah, so I want to pull that apart a little bit more.
Let's do it.
So something that you just said there is that we think and I love it. Well, I already told you that, or go read the standard operating procedure, or all those things that, yes, they're important, but a phrase I often use is the chief reminding officer.
Right.
And you know that you are a good leader if you embrace that idea that I am a chief reminding officer.
Yeah.
Right. And again, to use a sports metaphor, is look at all the different professionals. They have a coach on the sideline. And even though that coach is said it 9,000 times in practice, he's reinforcing it from the sideline.
Right. I don't know why the workplace or organizationally, when you're off a field or a court or a stage or something, that's not embraced more. We see it all the time. We have the examples for us out there in the high profile thing. We got Super Bowl coming up. Those teams didn't get there because of a lack of reinforcement along the way. And I'm talking about decades probably too, right?
Yeah.
I used to joke, of course, I don't like this title but I used to joke that I'm just a giant Post-it note. I always felt like that's all I'm just here to remind people. I never thought of chief reminder officer, but Post-it note. In fact, we made Post-it notes with 212. I mean, we made a lot of things with 212 on it, but and that's the idea. This mug or this cup that we no longer sell this, but it stays keeping messages in front of people. I always say, I think I say it in the book, with awareness comes responsibility. Well, that's expanded a little bit for me. It's not just responsibility, but with awareness comes opportunity. So and that's really, what 212 has evolved into over the last couple decades of its changing and its iterations and its different books. I know some people have the hardcover, the gift version, some people have the original soft cover. In the beginning, it was really, for me, and I was, of course, younger, a lot younger, and I thought it was all about extra effort. Well, it's evolved for me to be even more about extra attention, deeper attention. And really, attention is just effort anyway, and then we can get into semantics and things. But being present, being now, in the now. So with a leader, for example, a leader being present with the person in front of them, or a person, not forget leaders, just a person being present with the task in front of them rather than being distracted. And I'm easily distracted personally. I tell you that 212 helps me stay, I remember I'm the 212 guy, so I have to lead by example, or do a better job of it at least. But I still make my mistakes and forget to push things.
Mm-hmm. So you said something brilliant there that I don't want
Brilliant.
the listeners
I don't know about
to miss.
brilliant, but
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Okay. What would I say?
Awareness brings opportunity.
Yeah.
And the evolution of this 212 concept, I would contend great leaders become self-aware, can self-regulate. And what I heard there is they really become 212 listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And and listening is, is more than just what's said, of course. It's also what was intended to be said or what the person might mean. Intention is huge, of course, right? And when you're listening to somebody, especially as a leader, I think I might have said this in Lead Simply, but when you're asking questions of a teammate, so if we say organizationally right now, if you're asking questions of a teammate, many times it's the second and third question that really matter. That's your extra degree. That's your 212 statement. In fact, I donate blood, and I've been doing it for 20 years. And the reason, or part of the reason, is because the first time I did it as an adult, the person who, because I had done it in high school once, I didn't like the experience, and I just was selfish for the next couple decades. And I had somebody who was taking their job seriously, and her name is Kathy, and she sat with me. She saw that I didn't like that I was donating blood. And she said, what's your blood type? She's trying to make a connection, be present with the guy. She wasn't looking over my shoulder or doing anything else. She says, you know, your blood type. I said, is O negative. She says, O negative. Well, that's the universal blood type that can be used by everybody. So it's really important for you to donate. And this was her 212 statement, though. And then she says, and your blood, if it's CMV free, will be used by babies. Your blood will be split into 4 pediatric units. And so that was the picture that she painted with that extra statement, that 212 statement, that made me stick to it more often than not, you know. And I've told that story a lot, and it's probably encouraged a lot of people to donate blood as well. So that was a person who wasn't going through the motions of her job. You know, she was paying attention to the work and to what she knew. It wasn't just about getting the blood, it was about making somebody comfortable, getting the blood, making sure it was okay, and then getting them to talk about it, right? And encourage others. That's spreading, you know, you want to be spreading, and that's another thing from, I'm getting all excited now, but the 212 mindset for a leader, if they embrace it, and they're a good leader, meaning it's not just about going through the motions themselves, you know, they can spread it. And it oftentimes, you know what the extra degree is in an organization? Sometimes it's a human. Just one human can make all the difference. It is really amazing on a team. I mean, we see it in sports, but less exciting and less high profile would be what happens at the office, you know. But it
Yeah, and I think
there.
that, you know, just in this thinking about 212 moments,
Yeah,
you had a 212 moment when you created this by
yeah,
listening at that breakfast. The 212 moment was that young gal looking at you and painting a picture of a 212 statement.
right,
So again, coming back to that 212 awareness is we're allowed just that extra degree.
right.
And why I love the concept so much, Sam, is that, you know, especially in the beginning of the year, we get these big, lofty goals and New Year's resolutions. And then,
Yeah,
you know, the second Friday, Quitter's Day comes along and they go away.
yeah,
Well, all of us can commit to this idea that that one extra degree has the potential to create the power to move a locomotive. That locomotive, metaphorically, your business, your life, your relationships, your culture, your sales, whatever it is, it's that one extra degree.
right. And a lot of times that extra degree, and this is important, this is one of the evolutionary kind of things with the messages. I've talked about it for so long and written about it. And you know, it's the truth of 212 is there are 211 degrees before that last degree. And scientifically, and you know, the hardcore people who will, the poo-poo people occasionally who will have issue with 212, they'll say, you know, and it's going to get scientific, you probably know this given your background, but that last degree takes extra, you know, an exponential level of calories in order to produce that extra degree. So it's much more difficult to go from 211 to 212 than it is from, say, 208 to 209. And yeah, I go, yeah, okay, but let's get over that. But let's also remember that, because that is true. You know, you think about I think about athletes in particular. Nobody, nobody in the NFL, except for maybe a kicker, but even them, I hope I didn't upset. I don't know if you have that, if you've got people watching from that world, but you know, nobody gets into professional sports without years and years of investment, not only theirs, but other people's investment in them, right? And that reinforcement. And so 212 message, while simple on its surface, and I think that's what's so wonderful about it, invites people in, gets them excited. But the deeper message is the consistent application of that heat, right? Of that attention, of that effort, and that resilience over time that brings them to something special.
So the simple application of that heat,
Yeah.
it's a big deal.
Yes,
It's
it
a
is.
big
And we
deal.
could do it everywhere. It's not, forget about, I know some people go, because I remember early on when I started speaking,
Mhm.
a concern for some of the decision makers, the people that I would talk with about having me in, they would say, well, our people are working hard. We don't want to be sending them a grind, we don't want to have to ask them to work too much harder. The message, and I get that, right? Because
Yeah, totally.
right. But the message really isn't about grinding it out like that. Yes, there's an element of that where it does become important, especially in sports. I mean, if you're a lineman in sports, the inches matter. We all know the Al Pacino thing in Any Given Sunday, all that kind of stuff. But the reality is, it's just just paying attention, right? And we don't have to do it. I mean, it can actually be a joy, frankly, and especially on the things you love. Like I like I mean, it's going to be a off topic, but I like to grocery shop, and it works out well for me and my wife because she doesn't like it. And you know, paying attention is how you save money. That's how you make money. And
Mhm.
financial people know this, paying attention to where you put your 401k or your retirement plan or whatever, being conservative in this area of your life and all those things by putting attention on it that's going to have that exponential difference or not, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yeah, great. I totally agree. So let me just transition a bit here. The concept of 212, like you just got done saying, is it's not hard, it's simple.
mhm,
But the application is where the effort is. It's the
yes,
awareness of the effort.
sustained actions what you're looking for, right?
S-
A-
Right.
and that's what's so wonderful about the message, at least from the feedback that I've gotten over the years, is that it's one of those kinds of things that is, because it's so simple, it lands, it sticks, it stays, and it shows up as sustained action. It falters, right? But that's where the
Mhm.
leader comes in, or that's where the self-leadership comes in, the self-awareness comes in, and I remind myself, hey, wait a minute, 212,
Mhm.
this detail might matter. Or
Mhm.
if for nothing else, maybe it won't matter, but
Mhm.
maybe I just do it anyway, you know?
Mhm.
Uh, especially with your primary relationship. If you're married, especially if you're early in your marriage, I highly recommend, like, I would love to do, I've written some things on I'm sorry, on marriage. I'm not going to name it 212 marriage because I don't like the I don't know, slickness of that or something, but maybe it's something
Mhm.
else. But the idea of paying attention nobody gets, well, very rarely does anybody get divorced overnight. It happens
Mhm.
over years of,
Right.
things not happening or happening and not, no attention, no connection,
Mhm.
grow apart, all kinds of different reasons. And, that primary relationship is incredibly important. It can seep out into, when it's good, it can work wonderfully for your professional life, as well as your
Mhm.
personal life, obviously, but it also moves out into your professional life a lot
Mhm.
too.
Mhm. Yeah, we often talk, Sam, all family businesses or all businesses are family businesses.
Mm,
When it's going well at home, it oftentimes is going well at work. When it's
right.
going well at work, it oftentimes. So the idea of keeping them separate, good luck, right? And
Severance. Are
I
you
like
watching
what,
Severance?
right?
Are you
Yeah,
watching
yeah.
Severance, the
No,
show?
I'm not
Oh,
watching, but I've heard people talk about it. Yes.
it's creepy. It's that's kind of, there's a message in there, something I haven't really about that, like the idea of separate. Well, actually it's not subtle, so it's right there in your face. But that's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
Separating the two, separating your lives. That's, well, I don't want to ruin it for anybody if they don't
Yeah.
know. So.
Well, let me ask you this: what are the most common barriers? What have you heard? What do you know to be true as you've done this work? Were those barriers that prevent people from giving that extra effort? And then what are the strategies or some practical insights to overcome those things?
All right. Well, I'm not going to do this in order of a descending order of importance or anything like that. I'll just say what I'm thinking, and because I gave this, as I think about that, I go, okay, well, One is going to be fatigue. You just get exhausted. And I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about the running thing or whatever, the physical thing. I'm saying you get mentally fatigued. You put yourself in a bad situation, but that can happen because of failures, right? Or mistakes that you've had in the past. And what that does is can sort of affect your confidence level as to, really should I invest this time and attention in this because I didn't work before and this time is not going to be any different. So you have this lack of confidence or trust that that 212 attention or effort are going to make a difference. So you decide, you know what, screw it, I'm not going to do it. Or what that could happen. So you got fatigue, you got a lack of confidence or trust. You can also have your environment, if you're feeding yourself the wrong things. I always talk about the importance of environment. And to be clear for anybody watching, I don't and haven't gotten this all right my entire life, and I still don't, and more than I'd like it not to be the case, right? So, but I do know that these things are true, and environment is a very important thing. And environment includes a number of things we don't normally think about. Like I look outside and I go, okay, well, that's the environment. Well, no, it's also my dog that's sitting here keeping me company and making me feel good, or it's that piece of art over there that I like that statement, so it makes me feel good. I bring in content. Content is environment, right? Content, the things we read, the things we watch, the people. People are huge to your environment. You can't always be around people who are absolutely wonderful. I always talk about, I used to play tennis, and I used to talk about the importance of playing with people who are better than you, so that you could grow. The problem is, as anybody who plays tennis knows, well, but that I should probably reciprocate that. So that means I got to play with people who are less than me, or in terms of skill, to help them, right? So, but you don't really want it. You always want to be playing with people who are better than you. Kind of got lost there a second, but where we're going back to, the things that get in the way, I'm going to say fatigue. It's going to be the confidence level, and then it's going to be your environment and the people. And also those people, the people can be you too. You get inside your head, you ruminate on the wrong things, you tell yourself the wrong things. I say a daily affirmation that I developed over time. Actually, in conjunction with an uncle who I mentioned to you was in chiropractic care, and it was somewhat inspired by his work. I think it might have been was it Jerry?
Jimmy Parker.
Jimmy, okay.
Yeah.
I say this affirmation every day. It's a couple hundred words, takes me about 90 to 120 seconds. I figure, I don't know if it's working necessarily, but it definitely, I always think, well, at least I'm saying a couple hundred words to myself that are positive to kick off my day. At least I've got that as the waters get a little choppy, And I think that goes to environment. So what are you doing? And people talk about morning routines all the time. I don't know if I like routine so much personally at this stage of my life. It's kind of boring, but I get it, especially if you're a high profile athlete or something like you have ritual. I get all that. But most of us in the regular world, we have to create an environment. Have you ever heard of the term smell the place? I forget the guy who did it. He's no longer living, but if anybody wants to Google smell of the place, it's really an old quality thing out of think the 90s, but the message inside there is he's talking about organizations and the smell of the place, meaning it's figurative, of course. And he's talking about this forest, Fontainebleau forest outside of Paris, I guess, and how it smells and it's beautiful. And he says, you got to bring that into your organization. I'm kind of butchering this a little bit, but the idea of that, I think, is something that we can do for ourselves as well, internally. It's not just about the organization. An organization that we're with absolutely is about that, especially if you're in a leadership role. You're setting up the culture, you're setting up the environment, you're nurturing those behaviors you want to see, you're cultivating an environment where it makes those things easier. or not. And but you can also do that as an individual. I can choose to read what I'm going to read or plant what I want at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day. I can make a conscious effort to do that or not. And that's, 212 again, great 30 words, 32 words, that opening preamble, and the idea, but the real message is it's a comprehensive thing. It's always around you. It's in the background, it's a backdrop. It is the smell of the place in a way.
Yeah, I love that analogy. And I think that as I hear you there and as you drink out of your cup, show your cup again. There's a symbol
Yeah,
that is that reminder, and it's in your environment.
right.
The books behind me that remind it. My 212 bracelet that I'm wearing.
Nice.
That is my reminder of it is around us. It is our environment.
Right.
And so how do we be more intentional about that environment? The people, right? Like you said, how do we not developing that fatigue, knowing a battery can't give off what it does not have? So
Right.
what do we conform to what we consume? So if we decide to consume only social media or we're not reading, or where are we getting the information that goes between our two ears? Because I would contend, Sam, and I think you'd agree with me, I've been around a lot of good leaders. I've been around some great leaders and I've been around some unstoppable leaders. And it's like, how do I put my thumb on what's different? And the one thing I keep coming back that's always the same,
hmm
it's their mindset.
Sure.
It's
And
a two
energy and enthusiasm, well, that goes to
totally.
mindset, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does, yeah, it's just
Right.
a 212. And that's why I love this 212 idea. So, okay, so if you haven't read the book, listen to the book. I've been through it so many times and I have it on my Audible. I like to listen to it. I have the physical book. I like the pictures. I love the stories. So that's what I want to ask you. Tell me about a story or the stories that really were, you've seen this 212 just be so transformational.
Well, obviously, obviously, I could do sports all day long, and I don't want to do that because it's kind of there's a lot of people who aren't interested in sports,
Mhm.
and we're not all at the high end like the end of. That's one of my pet peeves with some of this is that everybody talks about, the big game and the big play by the superstar. I mean, these people. The thing about it's funny the people who really get into 212 are already 212ers. It's amazing. I mean, you know,
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
yeah, and we all know it. And it's funny, Gallup, although I don't know how they can possibly summarize things this way, but Gallup's numbers roughly say that 30% of us are engaged with our work. Roughly 54% are disengaged, give or take a point, either, different years. And then 17%, whatever the math works out there to be 100%, but 17% of us are actively disengaged. So really, roughly 70% of people go to work and they don't bring their full selves to work, and 30% do. And I don't know where I was going with that. Shoot.
Well, let me help you because
Yeah.
I'm running the math in my
Yeah.
head right
Mhm.
now, and I'm thinking about our 168 hours we all have every week,
Yeah.
and knowing that out of that 168 hours, 40% of it, most of us are going to work.
35 to 40% of our waking hours are spent at work. You're right.
So I think that it's a big number, but the math that I've heard people say in the past is that's 100,000 hours
Mhm.
in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And if 70% of us are disengaged and hate it, that is mediocrity. And
Yeah.
that is not fulfillment or impact. And that sucks. That's miserable. So how do we change that and see our lives differently, our places of work differently, the people we work with differently, whatever the service or commodity or widget we're selling? How do we see those things differently?
Well, there's a lot of variables, as you know, that would go
Yeah.
um, into a specific answer on that.
Mhm.
If you're lucky enough to enjoy your work, I think really a big to get out of the self-help typical statement here for a second. If the reality is a lot of work, a lot of types of work aren't enjoyable. It just isn't. And we're going to find, and a lot of that's going to go away, I think, in the near term because of AI and things that are happening much faster than we feel like we want it to. And maybe, I mean, who knows? I have no idea. I'm not an AI expert or anything, but a lot of the tedious work that nobody likes is going to go away. Just like machines took away, the back-breaking labor that we used to do at certain times. Of course, we used to make things, it seems, a lot better, but then not as cheap as we do now. But I just think people, we just need to figure out ways to make work more enjoyable. That goes to the culture of the environment, and I think that's in the leaders' wheelhouse. And they don't always have it, because then it gets challenging because they don't always have the ability to change it, because they might have a boss who's saying, who knows, all the layers of bosses, if one of them is not engaged or is not a pleasant human being or is a nasty person or an enabler or wants to do unethical things, then everything else gets more challenging. Ideally, you want work that people enjoy, or at least enjoy a little bit more. And leaders should be working on making it a more enjoyable process or a more enjoyable goal or target, instead of doing the old school stuff like I grew up with. And I think people are getting more like that. I mean, we've seen that with the pandemic. The pandemic has shown us we don't have to be in an office. I am a big believer in being together and in an office, not necessarily in an office, whatever that might mean, but I am a big believer in coming together as people. And I don't like when people say meetings are stupid. And I just think, I told you earlier, about 212, the success of 212 was not, it was certainly not just because I wrote it. I mean, the enormous energy and attention of people who I don't even know made all of that happen. So yes, I got to be the spark. That's fun. And I get to ride it along. But, a lot of people came together to make that happen. And I just think, I think we need to make our workplaces kinder. And I think we're working toward that, although I think, well, I don't want to get into it. So anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How do you personally discipline yourself to live this 212 mindset? And and then what would you give for practical application for those people that need help developing that consistency, that sustained effort?
Manage to your energy, know yourself. Like I'm for example, I'm more creative. I tend to be more creative in the morning. And on fire, in fact. I'm afraid and I start early. I do a creative exercise called morning pages, where I write stream of conscious writing. Usually takes me about a half an hour. By the time my wife is getting ready to go, my wife's an art teacher in a high school. By the time she's leaving, I am a freight train mentally running down the track. But that will go away, and I know what time it starts to happen. So I try to manage to that and use that time. I try to make sure I go to my advice earlier about the environment. I try to feed myself the best things I can when I make mistakes or fail, or I don't do the thing I wanted to do. I try to go to my points of resilience, and resilience to me is incredibly important. In fact, I would even say that all of this hinges on resilience, because we are going to make mistakes. We are going to fail. We're going to let others down. We're going to let ourselves down. So the ability to bounce back faster, that's the key. I mean, you're going to bounce back because you're not going to really have a choice unless it's a really dire, awful circumstance. You are going to bounce back now it can be at a good level or it cannot be, so you have to decide. You got to make that choice. And if you are, what you need, or what I find helpful, these are the points that I find helpful to being resilient. drop the ego. You drop the ego. Something happens. Let's say I didn't do what I needed to do today before 11 o'clock and I had plans to do that. Oh my gosh, I could get down on myself, but I can just go, okay, wait, drop the ego, get out of it. Has nothing to do with me. Stay objective, drop the ego, stay objective. I learn what I can from what I didn't do or did do and I shouldn't have done, whatever. I learn what I can and then I keep doing. I keep moving forward. And then I return to that truth of those first points. That's what keeps this thing going. Right? I keep reminding myself of that. It takes a lot of discipline to do that. I'm lucky that I have some of that discipline. Not everybody does, and I get that. Not everybody is naturally curious. I get that. Not everybody wants to play this game. They don't want to be at a certain high level. Some things I don't want to be at a high level. It's just, but you got one life to live, and you got to decide. I think you got to decide what's important to you and to put your attention completely into that. I'm starting to remove myself from social media, which is probably contrary to a lot of people might think because of, what I've been doing for the last 20 years. You want to be out in front. Although I'm buying a little more into Cal Newport's stuff about deep work. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Okay. He's fortunate because you do need attention. So in the marketplace, if you're going to serve a market, you have to have attention of that market. So it's helpful that he's a he has a job as a professor at Georgetown to back up all the other things. But I do see the truth in that deep work. I understand what he's saying. If you're lucky enough to find your thing and dig into it hard, that's where you need to be. And to not do that, to not have the 212 mindset and attention level and resilience, you're just hurting yourself and maybe all of us, right? Really, because we need you to do the things you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Sam, like you said, not everybody does want this, and there's certain areas of my life I don't want it, right? But having enough awareness, go back to that awareness creating opportunity, and if you want something different, you have to do something different.
Yeah.
And this 212 mindset of where I'm even hearing another important piece of this even today as we have this conversation of sustained effort.
Yes.
Versus the opposite of that would be unsustained effort.
Right. Everybody knows, especially anybody who's any younger people who are really into their exercise, right? I got 3 kids and they're all into exercising, and they remind me of, I think they're a little over the top, but I'm happy that they care about their health. That intensity is great, but it's a long road, and they have to be, that's gonna wane, probably gonna wane a little bit. And so it's not just about that. And I really want to, actually, now that I'm saying this, really want to get away from the exercise or the physical part of this, because I think the real benefits because that's all obvious. We all know that we go to the gym. That's where I was going with that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
My biceps aren't going to change in size because I do 1 rep, walk out of the gym. I got to do it, and I got to do it, every other day or whatever is your workout routine. But the more important benefit, I think, at least again at this stage of my life, having been through a lot of different life phases, typical life phases, and parenting, marriage, business, all that, sales. The most benefit that somebody can get from this is applying it, I think, to their interpersonal relationships. And to what they do for their mind. The body's important, absolutely important. Of course, you know this. In fact, it's my understanding chiropractic care is based primarily on the nervous system, right? Is that correct? And
Correct.
The adjustments you make at the nervous system level, how it extends out to here, out to here. And I'm probably butchering that.
No, hey, okay. You did good. Yeah.
But so it's, there is a core, like with chiropractic care, the nervous system, the spine, and there's the same for just regular for our lives. It is about our mental health. And of course, we're giving more and better attention to that in the last 20 years than we did when I was a kid. or a young person, but we need to, that's where I think we get the most benefit of all of this. Of course, you know, not eating that last bite of the thing at the end of the night might be a good idea. I just finished dry January, and um, I tend to lose some weight easily by not doing that,
Mm-hmm.
having the beer, and
Mm-hmm.
because I like beer, and
Mm-hmm.
but that's highly caloric, and you remove
Mm-hmm.
that, and boom. I mean, it's so there are these little things you can do from a physical standpoint, but I think the real benefit is when you get the 212 mindset, uh, give it to your mind and to your demeanor, or I should say your disposition, because demeanor is just outward appearance, but disposition is the internal thing where who you are really. When you give your attention to that, to becoming a kinder, more loving, caring, compassionate person, encouraging, inspiring, all the good things, I think that ultimately that's where if I faltered earlier, that's where I wish I had spent more time at this stage in my life. And I know I've said
Mm-hmm.
that several times, but it's,
Yeah.
I say that because things change.
Mm-hmm.
I know that 5 years from now I could think differently.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think, like go back, you always look back as being at parenting. What thing didn't I do, or what
Mm-hmm.
thing could I have done that was different?
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, science says that parents don't have as much influence as we think we do, so we can get that burden off of our shoulders.
Yeah.
But we do have a little bit of influence,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's one area that I wish I had given more attention. But also marriage, although
Mm-hmm.
I've been married for 32 years, and we've done I think a good job.
Mm-hmm. So I like what you're saying there, though, again, is give your mind this gift.
Yes, nicely put. Yeah.
Yeah. Give your mind this gift of the 212. Give your disposition. I like how you said and described disposition. Give your disposition this gift
Yeah.
because you'll have a better impact. You'll live a life more fulfilled. And also, guys, just like Sam said, this is a journey. We're on this journey. Give yourself 212 grace. It's okay
That's
to
good.
trip and
Yes.
trip and fall once in a while and have that self-awareness to get the train back on the track, right?
Recently, I mentioned the affirmation earlier, and I recently I revised my affirmation over time, and
Mhm.
I just added a new line, and it's I I love only what happens. It's based on a Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius said, "Love
Mhm.
only what happens. That's harmony. That's destiny, or that's calm, or something like that." And I said, "Love only what happens. I respond thoughtfully and objectively, without unneeded hyperbole, aggression, or agenda, externally and internally." So what I'm reminding myself there,
Hold on a sec. You got to say it one more time.
okay, um, I love only what happens. The idea here, so this is really just an objectivity, a removal of ego, and an objective way of looking at life. It's a Stoic kind of thing, but said in a different way. And so I love only what happens. I respond thoughtfully and objectively, without unneeded hyperbole, aggression, or agenda, externally and internally. So the reason I say that is because obviously, like, my wife can come to me and say something, yeah, you didn't clean this, or I don't. She's not like that, but bad example. But I go, and I'm like, I could go, what are you talking about? And that's an unneeded aggression, or hyperbole in a way. But so there's the external, but then there's also internal. I remember I recently said, I'll keep my mouth clean here, but I recently made a big mistake playing Wordle, and I called myself a blanking idiot. And it's a word game. And I'm thinking, that's unneeded hyperbole. Why did I don't know what childhood trauma created that, but that's where I'm talking. We don't need to tell ourselves an exaggerated story about something that's just simply, hey, you messed up this thing. So what?
Mm.
What can we learn? That's to stay objective, remove the ego, stay objective. What can I learn? Keep moving forward, and then revert back to the truth, finding what's true. What am I trying? What are we trying to do?
If
I
you would have only started right there, And this me being selfish right now. That's what I needed to hear. Unneeded hyperbole and aggression.
An agenda.
'Cause- And
It's,
agenda.
yeah.
Because you know what? That's self-awareness and quieting that ego. And I love it externally and internally. And just coming self-aware about that. And why waste my energy on some of that?
And also saying, one of the things, so you mentioned forgiving yourself faster,
Hmm.
or I don't know if I say it's faster, but I think you did. And then giving yourself the 212 grace.
Yeah.
Um, I talk about that when I keynote, I'll say forgive somebody else faster than you normally might. The key being faster, somebody else, not just internally, because you're right. I
Hmm.
agree. Forgive yourself, give yourself that grace, but also other people. Like I like to talk about the fact that, and I really think the world would be a much better place if we did this, if we forgave people in the same way we wanted, and of course I didn't say this is biblical stuff, this is
Hmm.
Socratic stuff, I'm sure, Plato, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But if we remember where we mess up, I mean, we just need to give people the break we want to be given. And when we put that there, barring the extreme, pretty much giving people forgiveness all the time, right? Doesn't mean you keep a person on your team necessarily,
Hmm.
because if they did something really badly or they couldn't perform or whatever. I'm not talking about, but forgiveness is what I'm talking about. And that is
Hmm.
the anger or the resentment that is behind, that forgiveness is just, hey man, I understand you did that. There might be a consequence to it, but I get it, man. I make those same mistakes too.
Hmm.
But I like your statement, 212 grace. That's I might explore that. That might be my morning, that morning meeting I told you that prompted the 212. I don't
Yeah.
know if the whole book's in there, but I like the
Yeah.
word grace because I really think we should all give each other more of that.
Hmm.
But to your point, I really like the idea of also making sure we do it for ourselves.
Totally. Well, Sam, this has been delightful.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
So I want guys, you've heard me talk about 212. You're not going to hear me stop talking about 212. I think this is something that we have to remind ourselves. Listen to what Sam said today. Let's give this as a gift to our mind and our disposition. So if you haven't read it, here's what I recommend. Number one, order the book. And the reason I like the physical book is I love the pictures. I love the stories. And then I also listen to it in Audible. There's something different even as I have heard it. And in going through, this is something that is not something you read once. It's not something you read twice. It's not something you listen to once or twice. I've been through it multiple times myself and go through 212 service, go through 212 leadership, walk through these concepts with your teams, those people you love. Put reminders, whether it be, I got a coaster in my office of 212. I set my coffee mug on. I got a bracelet around my wrist. This year in my passcodes, I have the number 212 as I get into my phone. So
No one be telling people that.
yeah, I got other things around that. But do this work, get this part of your DNA and who you are. And also, I just encourage you go out too, and maybe Sam, you can give us some direction on this where we learn more about you. But Sam's got a book called Live Simply.
Lead simply.
I'm sorry, Lead
Yeah.
Simply, which is a fantastic resource to learn how to lead simply. There's another one called Cross the Line. And this is a great book. It all starts with a choice. So just a simple book. Great resource. And then I love the title of this, Sam. Smile and Move. Smile and Move. Boy, I think we can get a lot more smiles. I wish we could out of people. It goes a long ways, right?
Well, I tell you, and that's a 212 thing to remember too. A simple smile. Um, I mentioned grocery stores earlier, but I have learned recently that it makes sense to, if you frequent certain stores, not just grocery stores, anywhere, learn the people's names that work
Mhm.
there and be pleasant to those people. And you will, I am telling you, life isn't all about getting things from people. But this one idea of connecting with people as people where you frequent these places where you're a customer, you will make friends with the gate agent at your, if you fly a lot, where you go out of, all these things, make friends with those people, know their names, share your name with them. That's a small thing and a fun thing that can translate into a lot of good. And you'll hear things, it's really great. And listen, I don't know when you're showing this, so maybe it's too late by the time, but there are 212 days throughout the year. This is for your leaders out there. There are 212 days. That you can make 212 a specific thing. So for example, February 12th is 212, February 12, you see that? And so that's 212 day. That's a Wednesday this year. So there's all sorts of ideas that you can apply. You could make it, for example, if you're a leader, you could have a lunch and you give out $212 gift card or whatever, all kinds of fun things you can tie it in. You could make it your new Valentine's Day. I always suggest this one because I don't like, my wife and I had a fight, fortunately, when we were dating 400 years ago. And we don't celebrate Valentine's Days, but we do celebrate 212 Day. Much less trafficked day that you can get reservations at a place. So 212 Day is the day when you give a little extra love and attention to that very important person in your life. There's June 2nd, tends to be 212 days left in the year. July 31st, unless it's a leap year, is the 212th day of the year. And then December 2nd, if you're in another country, which most countries don't do the date convention that we do, you would, the December 2nd is actually the reverse of February 12th because that's the way they do it. Lots of fun to be had is my point.
Yeah. And another good reminders to give this as a gift to your mindset, give this as a gift to your disposition.
Right.
So what's the best spot for them to pick up these books? I know
Well, those are all of them except for 212. Well, 212 is also available at successories.com. And if you want to see where I've started to explore 212 a little bit more in a little deeper way at 212edge.com. So 212edge.com. And that'll just get you to, that's just a pointer to where I do a lot of writing that's not just 212 related, but also a lot of personal writing. I did a one-sentence fiction story today. I released a one-sentence fiction story today that was really out of my wheelhouse. But again, it's 212 risk, right? I try a lot of different things, but if you go to 212edge.com, you can find my newer thoughts on 212 starting, but I've got a lot of work to do there because I've got a bunch of different ideas I want to bring forward.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Sam, thanks. This has been a delight.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it so much. Thanks,
Thanks
Sam.
for having me.
You bet.
We all have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.